Good day, everyone. We are down to the last chapter, which is about the recognition and measurement in SMEs. Since may background na kayo regarding SME mula sa discussion ni Mr. Erhalon, we'll proceed na to the discussion of the problem requirements for this chapter. So, for problem 50-1, ang hinahanap is revenue. Sa 50-2 naman is inventory. Meanwhile, dito sa 50-3 and 50-4 na problem, similar lang sila ng hinahanap, which is investment in associates. Pero, yung specific na requirement is unique or different sila from one another. Dito rin sa 50-5 to 6 na similar lang din na investment property and unique din yung mga specific na hinahanap. So, dito sa problem 50-7 is similar yung hinahanap sa 50-5 and 6, which is investment property. Pero kung makikita nyo dun sa specification is very different from sa mga naunang problems. Dito naman sa 50-8, ang hinahanap is government grant. Meanwhile, sa problem 50-9 and 10, ang hinahanap natin or requirement is intangible assets. Ngayong alam na natin kung ano yung mga problem types and requirements niya, mag-proceed na agad tayo sa ating mga problems.
For problem 50-1, before we start solving or analyzing and answering the problem, I just wanna say hi to Daisy Raymond channel and I hope you're doing great. So let's proceed to the problem. An SME sold goods with list price of 1 million to a customer on normal credit terms of 30 days interest-free credit. 10 days after nangyari ng sale, nagbayad ng 690,000 ang customer sa SME as final settlement ng debt. Kasama sa na-receive ng SME ang 50,000 value-added tax collected on behalf of national government. The settlement of the amount is net of 200,000 trade discount, 100,000 volume rebate, and 10,000 prompt settlement discount. The question is, what amount should be reported as sales revenue? So, ano nga ba ang revenue for SME at paano ito na-measure? According sa PFRS for SME, revenue results from the sale of goods, services being rendered, constructions contract, income by the contractor, and the use by others of your assets. Principle for measurement of revenue is the fair value of the consideration received or receivable, taking into account any possible trade discounts or rebates, including volume rebates and prompt settlement discounts. Ngayong alam na natin kung ano ang revenue for SME at ano ang dapat i-take into account to measure it, pwede na nating makuha ang sales revenue. Proceed po tayo sa solution. So, sa list price ng goods na 1 million, ibabawas natin dito ang trade discount na 200,000, volume rebate na 100,000 at 10,000 prompt settlement discount since kailangan itong i-take into account. We will get the remittance of 690,000 o yun ngang naging full settlement ng customer. Pero dahil kasama ang value-added tax collectible sa na-receive ng SME, kailangan din itong i-deduct kaya naman ang total sales revenue ng entity ay 640,000. So next po.
Problem 50-2. So at the beginning of current year, an SME acquired goods for sale in the ordinary course of business for 1 million, including a 50,000 refundable purchase taxes. The supplier usually sold the goods on 30 days interest-free credit, and an appropriate discount rate is 10%. However, as a special promotion, the purchase agreement for these goods provided for payment be made in full at the end of the current year. And in acquiring the goods, transport charges of 20,000 were incurred. So the question is, what amount should be recorded as cost of purchases? So PFRS for SMEs and full PFRS are the same in the matter of determining the cost of purchases of inventory. The cost of purchase comprises the purchase price, import duties, non-recoverable or recoverable purchase taxes, and transport and other costs directly attributable to the acquisition. The calculation is to add freight into the initial purchase cost and then subtract purchase allowances, purchase discounts, and purchase returns. So based sa given data ng SME, nag-acquire ang entity ng goods amounting 1 million, so this 1 million ang purchase price, including daw ang refundable purchase taxes na 50,000 pesos. So ang refundable purchase taxes po ay nangyayari when a customer purchase a taxable item of tangible personal property and returns it to the retailer for cash or credit within 90 days from the date of purchase. The customer is entitled to a refund of sales tax at the rate that was applied to the original purchase based on the portion of the purchase price returned. At since refundable purchase tax siya, adidak natin ito sa purchase price ng goods at makukuha na ang net purchase price na 950,000. Bakit at saan naman nakuha itong 0.909? Kasi sabi man din na sa problem ay may appropriate discount rate na 10% na binigay ang supplier, but the purchase agreement provided that sa December 31 daw ng same year dapat ang full payment. Hence, akunin natin iyong present value of 1 at 10% for 1 period. Kaya nag-arrive sa 0.909 na multiply natin sa net purchase price na 950,000 to get the cash price amounting to 863,550 pesos. Hindi pa dyan nagatapos kasi dibaga ang cost of purchases man din ay includes pa ng transports. Ay may transport charge na na-incur amounting to 20,000. So, 863,550 pesos minus freight na 20,000 pesos ay makukuha na natin ang cost of purchase amounting to 883,550,000 pesos, which is letter D. So, the next problem po will be reported by Mr. Peregrine.
Yan, so andito na po tayo sa problem 50-3. And I was assigned to discuss the first question. So, ang ating pong question, under cost model, what is the total carrying amount of the investments in associates on December 31? So, bago po tayo mag-proceed sa solution, basahin ko po muna yung problem. At the beginning of current year, SME acquired 25% of the equity of each of entities A, B, and C for 1 million, 1,500,000, and 3 million respectively. Transaction cost of 10% of the purchase price were incurred by SME. On January 15, entity A paid dividend of 100,000. On December 31, entity B paid dividend of 800,000. Entities A and B recognize net income respectively of 500,000 and 1,800,000 for the current year. However, entity C recognized net loss of 2 million for the current year. Published price quotation do not exist for the shares of entities A, B, and C. And using appropriate value techniques, SME determined the following fair value of the investments in associates on December 31. So, in investment in associate A, meron siyang fair value na 1,400,000. Investment in associate B, 2,800,000. Investment in associate C, 2 million. And the cost of disposal are estimated at 5% of fair value. So, sa investment in associate A, ang cost of disposal po niya ay 70,000. Investment in associate B, 140,000. Investment in associate C, 100,000. So, when it comes to investment in associates, an SME shall account for investments in associates or jointly controlled entities using the cost model, equity method, or fair value model, and using the same accounting policy for all investments in associates. Since ang hinahanap natin is a carrying amount of investments in associates under cost model, the investment in associate is initially measured at the transaction price including transaction cost. Subsequently, the investor shall measure the investment in associate at cost less any accumulated impairment loss. In other words, the investment in associate using the cost model is subject to impairment. So, proceed po tayo sa solution. Dito po muna tayo mag-focus kay associate A. Sabi nga po kanina, under cost model, the investment in associate is initially measured at the transaction price including the transaction cost. Based sa problem, ang investment in associates A ay nagkakahalaga ng 1 million. Then for the transaction cost, sabi sa problem, transaction cost of 10% of the purchase price were incurred by SME. So, ang mangyayari, 10% ng transaction price ang transaction cost. Kaya tayo na mayroon dyan 10% times 1 million. So, next, sabi nga kanina, the investment is in associate using cost model is subject for impairment. And impairment means unexpected and drastic drop in the fair value of an asset. Kaya naman, the investor shall measure the investment in associate at cost less any accumulated para malaman natin if the investment in associate is impaired or not impaired. So, ang fair value as of December 31, ang investment in associate A ay 1.4 million based sa ating given. Less cost of disposal na 70,000 na nasa given din natin. So, ang ating fair value less cost of disposal ng investment is associate cost of disposal ng investment in associate A ay 1,330,000. So, ang investment in associate A is not impaired because the fair value less cost of disposal is higher than carrying amount of 1,100,000. An asset is impaired if its carrying amount exceeds its recoverable amount. The recoverable amount is then defined as the higher of its value in use and fair value less cost of disposal. Since the carrying amount of investments in associate A is less than the fair value less cost of disposal, the investment is not impaired. Same scenario in investment in associate B, ang transaction price based sa given ay 1.5 million and the transaction cost is 10% of the purchase price. So, 10% times 1.5 million, meron tayong transaction cost na 150 million. Then, ang fair value niya as of December 31 ay 2.8 million. Less than cost of disposal based sa ating problem, ang estimated cost of disposal ng investment in associate B ay 140,000. So, ang ating recoverable amount is 2,660,000. Since the carrying amount of investment in associate B, which is 1,650,000, did not exceed the recoverable amount of 2,660,000, therefore, the investment in associate B is not impaired. So, lastly, yung investment in associate C, ang purchase price is 3 million na may transaction cost na 300,000. So, ang carrying amount ng investment in associate C is 3,300,000. Then, i-compute naman natin ang recoverable amount niya. Same format, fair value less cost of disposal. So, ang fair value ng investment in associate C based sa given ay 2 million. Then, ang cost of disposal is 100,000. So, 2 million minus 100,000, ang recoverable amount niya is 1,900,000. So, kung mapapansin po ninyo, yung carrying amount niya ay mas malaki dun sa recoverable amount or the fair value less disposal na 1,900,000. Ibig sabihin, the investment of associate C is impaired. Sabi ko nga kanina, an asset is impaired if its carrying amount exceeds its recoverable amount. at ang kanyang impairment loss under cost model is 1,400,000. Pero ang hinahanap sa question 1 ay total carrying amount of investments in associates on December 31. So pagsasama-samahin lang natin lahat ng na-compute natin na carrying amount ng mga investments. For investments in associate A, meron carrying amount na 1,100,000. In associate B, 1,650,000. Sa associate C, 1,900,000. Pag pinag-add natin lahat, ang total carrying amount of the investments as of December 31 under cost model is 4,650,000, letter A. So, next question po ay didiscuss ni Ms. Acabo.
Dito po sa question number 2, ang hinahanap naman po natin dito is impairment loss under the cost model. So under the cost model, the investment in associate is initially measured at the transaction price including transaction cost. Ito po ay parehas lamang po ng way ng pagkuha ni Mr. Peregrine kanina. So to get the total cost, we need to add the investment associate of C amounting to 3 million to transaction cost na 300,000, and we have now the total cost which is 3,300,000. After that, we also need to deduct the cost of disposal to fair value to get the fair value less cost of disposal. 2 million minus 100,000 is equal to 1,900,000. Since the fair value less cost of disposal is lower than the carrying amount, the investment associate C is impaired. And to get that, we simply deduct the carrying amount of 3,300,000 to fair value less cost of disposal amounting to 1,900,000. We'll get the impairment loss amounting to 1,400,000, which is letter A.
For question 3 naman po, under the equity method, what is the total carrying amount of the investments in associates on December 31? Ang uunahin po muna natin kunin is yung mga carrying amount ng investments in associates A, B, and C. Dito po muna tayo sa investments in associate A. Para makuha po ang carrying amount niya, i-add po natin yung amount ng investments in associate A na 1 million sa transaction cost na 100,000. So, bakit kasama itong transaction cost? Dahil sabi, under the equity method, the investments account is initially recognized at the transaction price, including transaction cost. Then, yung answer ng dalawa ay ma-minus naman po natin sa cash dividends na 25,000. Nakuha natin itong 25,000 sa pag-multiply sa acquired 25% na sa 1 million na equity ng associate A. Ang sabi nga sa dividends and other distributions received from the associate are recognized as reduction of the carrying amount of the investment. Pagkatapos, i-add naman natin sa share in net income of A na 125,000. Nakuha natin itong 125,000 sa pag-multiply ng acquired 25% sa recognized net income na 500,000. So, 1 million plus 100,000 minus 25,000 plus 125,000 is equals to 1,200,000 na carrying amount. So, the investment in associate A is not impaired because the fair value less cost of disposal of 1,330,000 is higher than carrying amount. Dito naman tayo sa investment in associate B. Para makuha po ang carrying amount niya, ganun din po sa pagkuha sa investment in associate A. So, yung investment in associate B ay merong 1,500,000. I-add natin yung 150,000 na transaction cost, then minus sa cash dividends na 200,000. Makikita naman po natin sa screen kung saan nakuha yung cash dividends. Then, i-add sa share in net income of B na 450,000. At makukuha na natin yung carrying amount na 1,900,000. So, the investment in associate B is not impaired because the fair value less cost of disposal of 2,660,000 is higher than carrying amount. So, dito naman kay investment in associate C.
So, bali, ang i-explain ko lang is hanggang fair value less cost of disposal. So, sabi nga sa problem, yung investment in Associate C ay merong 3 million. I-add natin ito sa transaction cost na 300,000. Then, i-deduct sa share in net loss of C na 500,000 at makukuha po natin yung cost na yung carrying amount na 2,800,000. At meron din po ditong fair value less cost of disposal na 1,900,000. May nabanggit po kasi sa problem about fair value of the investments in associates on December 31. Yung associate C ay mayroong 2 million, so para makuha yung fair value less cost of disposal, yung 200,000 ay ima-minus natin sa investment in associate C na 100,000, which is yung 100,000 naman ay nakuha sa pag-multiply ng estimated at 5% at fair value sa 2 million na mayroon ang associate C. Yung i-consider po nating investment for associate C is 1,900,000. So kung i-compare po natin itong associate C sa A and B, mas malaki yung carrying amount, which means impaired ito. Unlike sa A and B, so sabi sa rule kapag ganito, the entity must reduce the carrying amount of the assets to its revocable amount recognized as impaired loss. Kaya yung 1,900,000 ang i-recognize sa pag-compute ng total carrying amount ng tatlong associates. So, dito na tayo sa pagkuha ng total carrying amount ng tatlong associates. I-add lang po yung tatlo. So, investment in associate A na 1,200,000 plus investments in associate B na 1,900,000 plus investments in associate C na 1,900,000 at makukuha na po natin yung total carrying amount on December 31 na 5 million. Letter B.
Ang tanong po sa number 4 sa parehong problem ay kung ano daw po yung marirecord na impairment loss gamit ang equity method. So the choices po ay 800,000, B 900,000, C 500,000, at D 0. So madali na lamang po ito since nakuha na ni Miss Paglinawan kanina yung mga data na gagamitin natin sa pagkuha ng impairment loss. Sa pagkuha po ng impairment loss, ang kailangan nating gawin ay i-deduct ang carrying amount sa fair value less cost of disposal. Nakuha po ni Miss Paglinawan yung carrying amount ng associate C kanina na 2,800,000 na siya naman nating ibabawas sa fair value less cost of disposal na 1,900,000 na nakuha sa pamamagitan ng pagdeduct ng investment in associate C na 100,000 which is nasa problem sa fair value ng investment ng associate C na 2 million which is given na din sa ating problem. So yung fair value less cost of disposal na 1,900,000 less yung nakuhang carrying amount ng associate C na 2,800,000. Makukuha na natin yung impairment loss na 900,000. So ang sagot po sa question number 4 sa parehong problem na ito ay letter B, 900,000. Ilaan po. Next po, Miss Valenzuela.
Question number 5 asks for the total carrying amount of the investment in associates on December 31 under the fair value model. Kung sa mga naunang questions ang ginamit sa pagkuha ng carrying amount ay cost model and equity method, dito naman ang gagamitin natin is the fair value model. Before tayo mag-proceed sa ating solution, may mga kailangan muna tayong tandaan when it comes to computing under the fair value model. First, the investment in associate is initially measured at the transaction price, excluding transaction costs. So, unlike sa mga previous models natin, hindi nakasama yung transaction cost sa initial measurement. Take note din na under sa fair value model, investment in associate is not tested for impairment. And dito rin ay ini-ignored ang cost of disposal since measured at fair value nga ito at hindi fair value at cost of disposal. So, no need na tingnan if impaired or hindi ba ang investment in associate. Sa halip, ang nire-recognize dito is kung may gain or loss ba sa changes in fair value. So, hindi ito kasing complicated ng cost model and equity method. So, proceed agad tayo sa ating computation. Dito muna tayo sa investment in associate A. Dito, since yung transaction price lamang ang included, ay may amount na tayo na 1 million. Sabi ko rin kanina, kinukuha sa fair value model yung changes sa fair value, kung may gain ba or loss. Kaya dito, ikinumpute natin yun through subtracting the 1.4 million FB sa 1 million and nakakuha tayo ng gain na 400,000. So, add lamang natin yon sa 1 million and makukuha natin ang carrying amount ng investment in associate na 1.4 million for investment in associate A. Same process din lang sa investment in associate B. Kaya tayo nag-arrive sa carrying amount na 2,800,000. Dito naman sa investment in associate C, mapapansin natin na nagkaroon ng loss dahil nag-decrease ang FB natin mula 3 million is naging 2 million. So, ito ay may loss na 1 million. Dahil may loss, ay subtract natin ito sa 3 million. So, may carrying amount tayong 2 million. Dahil ang tanong sa question number 5 is total carrying amount, we need to sum up the carrying amount of the 3 investment in associates. So, add lang natin yung 1.4 million ng A, 2.8 million ng B, and 2 million ng C, and we will be able to get 6.2 million na total carrying amount. Yung computation na nandito naman sa babang bahagi is kinumpute lang dito kung ilan yung net change in fair value and tiningnan if may net gain or loss ba. So, dito inad lang yung nakuhang gain sa A and B na 400,000 and 1.3 million. Then, sinubtract yung loss na 1 million. Kaya nakuha yung net gain na 700,000. Thank you.
And for problem 50-4, it is about the investment in associates, implicit goodwill, investment income at carrying amount. So the problem is, at the beginning of the current year, the SME acquired a 30% interest in the ordinary shares of an investee for 15 million. On this date, the carrying amount of the net assets acquired is 13,250,000. The carrying amount of the net assets acquired equaled fair value except for equipment whose fair value exceeded the carrying amount by 2.5 million. The remaining useful life of the equipment is 5 years. Any implicit goodwill is amortized over the maximum allowed by SME standard. The investee reported net income of 20 million for the current year and paid cash dividend of 7.5 million. The fair value of the investment in associate is 21 pesos, 250,000 at year-end, and there is no published price quotation. SME elected to use the equity method. So for question number 1, what is the implied goodwill from the acquisition? So proceed na tayo sa solution. Yung carrying amount daw ng net assets na acquire ay ililess sa cost. So 15 million minus 13,250,000 resulting sa 1,750,000 excess cost. Tapos, i-deduct din natin yung mga attributable sa equipment natin. So, meron tayong 30% na interest para sa ordinary shares at 2.5 million carrying amount. Then, we multiply the 2.5 million sa 30%, magkakaroon tayo ng deduction for excess cost na 750,000. So, 1,750,000 excess cost less 750,000 attributable equipment equals to 1 million implied goods. So, that is letter B. So, next reporter po ay si Miss Linga.
For the second question in problem 50-4, we are going to find the amount that should be reported as investment income for the current year. Let's proceed to the solution po. To get the investment income, we will deduct the amortization of equipment and goodwill in the amount of share in the net income. So we have here 6 million derived from the 30% of 20 million. Then amortize equipment na 150,000 na nakuha natin from dividing the 750,000 divided by 5. And the amortized goodwill na 100,000 na nakuha naman natin from dividing 1 million to 10. So, 6 million minus 150,000 and 100,000 is equal to 5 million and 750,000, which is in letter C. take note po natin, under PFRS for SMEs, all intangible assets, including goodwill, are amortized. Kaya natin kinuha yung mga amortization ng equipment and goodwill. And also, if the useful life of an intangible asset cannot be determined reliably, it is based on the best estimate of management but not exceeding 10 years. Kaya dinivide po natin sa 10 yung 1 million. Next problem, Miss Maigting po.
For question 3 of problem 50-4, what is the carrying amount of the investment in associated at year-end? Remember na ang ginagamit ng SME ay equity method at sa method na ito, ang investment ay initially recognized at transaction price including transaction cost. Tandaan din na sa method na ito, dividends and other distributions received from the associate are recognized as reduction of the carrying amount of the investment. So, analyze na natin yung problem. Ang transaction price ng investment ay 50 million at ang investment income na nakuha sa question 2 ay 5,750,000. Nasabi din sa problem na 30% ang na-acquire ng interest ng SME. So, to get the carrying amount of the investment in associate, we will add the transaction cost na 15 million and the investment income na 5,750,000. After that, i-deduct naman ang dividend received dahil nga ang ginagamit ng SME ay equity method. So, paano ba kinukuha ang yung dividend received? I-multiply lang natin yung 30% interest na na-acquired ng SME sa 7,500,000 na paid cash dividend. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng dividend received na 2,250,000. I-deduct naman natin ito sa sum ng transactions price at investment income to get 18,500,000 as carrying amount of investment in associate at year-end. Next po.
Problem 50-5 is asking for the carrying amount of the building on December 31, 2019. At the beginning of the current year, an SME acquired a building to be held as investment property in a remote location for 5 million. After initial recognition, the entity measured the investment property using the cost model because the fair value cannot be measured reliably without undue cost or effort on an ongoing basis. At year-end, management assessed the building's useful life at 20 years from the date of acquisition and presumed the residual value to be nil because the fair value cannot be determined reliably. And at year-end, the entity declined an unsolicited offer to purchase the building for 6.5 million. This is a one-time offer that is unlikely to be repeated in the foreseeable future. So what is the carrying amount of building at year-end? Section 16 defined investment property as an investment in land and buildings or part of a building and some property interest in finance leases held to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or both. And under IAS 40, investment properties are initially measured at cost, and with some exemptions may be subsequently measured using a cost model or fair value model, with changes in the fair value under the fair value model being recognized in profit or loss. So nabanggit din sa problem na ang ginamit ng entity ay ang cost model because the fair value nga cannot be measured reliably without undue cost. So, the PFRS for SMEs provides 3 types of measurement model to be used, and those are the cost, fair value, and equity model. At under cost model nga, which is yung model na in-apply ng entity, the investment associate is initially measured at transaction price including the transaction cost. At para naman sa subsequent measurement, under cost model, ang associate in investment ay measured subsequently at cost, less accumulated depreciation, and less accumulated impairment losses. Thus, to get the carrying amount at year-end ng building or ng investment property, Ang cost of inventory property na 5 million minus 250,000 na accumulated depreciation was calculated by dividing 5 million sa 20 years na useful life and will arrive sa 4,750,000 na carrying amount on December 31, 2019. And the answer po for this problem 50-5 ay letter D. So the next problem will be discussed by Mr. Peregrine.
So problem 50-6. Let me read the problem first. On January 1, 2021, an SME acquired a property consisting of 10 identical freehold detached houses, each with separate legal title, including the land on which it is built for 200 million, 20% of which is attributable to the land. The units have a useful life of 50 years. The following costs are also incurred on such date: non-refundable transfer taxes not included in the purchase price, 20 million. Legal costs directly attributable to the acquisition, 1 million. Reimbursement to the previous owner for prepaying non-refundable property taxes for the 6-month period ending June 30, 2021, 100,000. Advertising campaign, 500,000. Opening function to celebrate a new rental business, 200,000. On June 30, 2021, SME paid local property taxes of 200,000 for the year ending June 30, 2022. Throughout 2021, SME incurred repairs and maintenance costs of 120,000. SME used one of the 10 units to accommodate the administrations and maintenance staff. The other 9 units were rented out to independent parties under operating leases. Refundable deposits held by SME on December 31, 2021 totaled 270,000. Rent received in the year ended December 31, 2022 totaled 1,550,000, of which 50,000 related to January 2022. On December 31, 2021, the fair value of each unit was reliably estimated at 25 million. The fair value of the units can be measured reliably on an ongoing basis without undue cost or effort. So, before po tayo mag-proceed sa solution, shoutout po muna tayo. So, Mr. Franz Tenorio, kung nakikinig ka ngayon, please type on the comment section kung saang problem ka na mentioned at dun with the correct answer sa problem na ito. So, for question number 1, what is the initial measurement of the investment property? Letter A, 198,900,000. Letter B, 198 million. Letter C, 176,800,000. Letter D, 180 million. Investment property shall be initially measured at cost, including the transaction cost. So, the cost of investment property includes purchase price and any directly attributable expenditure such as legal fees or professional fees, property taxes, and etc. So, proceed po tayo sa solution. So, yung purchase price natin based sa given ay 200 million. Then, i-add natin yung mga transaction cost, which is directly attributable expenditure. At sa ating given, ang kasama sa ating transaction cost are transaction costs na non-refundable transfer taxes amounting to 20 million and yung legal cost amounting to 1 million. So, magkakaroon tayo ng total cost na 221 million. So, and to get the initial cost of investment property, since sabi sa problem, merong 10 units of houses, pero the SME used one of the 10 units to accommodate the administration and maintenance staff, and the other 9 units were rented out to independent parties under operating leases. So, para makuha natin yung initial cost, ito times natin siya sa 9 units over 10 units. Kasi nga, 1 out of 10 units ay ginamit for accommodation of administration and maintenance staff. Therefore, 221 million times 9 over 10. Ang initial cost ng investment property is 198,000. Yes, 198,900. Letter A.
Kung ang hinanap sa question 1 is initial measurement of the investment property, dito naman po sa question 2, Miss Ivy Dayan Cruzado, ang hinahanap is initial measurement of the land to be accounted for as property, plant, and equipment. So, para po makuha yung initial cost ng land, i-add lang po natin yung total cost sa initial cost of investment property. Since nakuha na po ni Mr. Peregrine yung total cost, which is 221 million, isusubtract lang po natin yung 198,900,000 and we will get the cost of land and building na 22,100,000. So, dahil initial cost of land yung hinahanap natin, ita-times natin ngayon itong cost of land sa 20%. So, yung 20% po is given. So, 20,100,000 times 20%, we will get the initial cost of land na 4,420,000, which is letter B po.
For question 3, what is the initial measurement of the building to be accounted for as property, plant, and equipment? Same rin lang po ito sa question 2, which is kagaya din po sa pagkuha ni Ms. Acabo, ang uunahin natin is yung cost of land and building. Yung total cost na 221 million ay ima-minus sa initial cost of investment property na 198,900,000 at makukuha natin yung cost of land and building na 22,100,000. Then, para makuha na natin yung initial cost of building, yung cost of land and building na nakuha natin ay ita-times sa 80%. So, bakit 80%? Kasi diba kanina 20% for land yung ginamit ni Miss Acabo. So, kung 20% sa land, ibig sabihin 80% naman yung percent for the building. So, 22,100,000 times 80% at makukuha na natin yung initial cost of building na 17,680,000. Letter C. I just want to say hi, Miss Marby.
For problem 50-6, question number 4. Ang tanong po ay what gain from the increase in fair value of investment property for the current year? So, ang mga choices po ay A, 51,100,000, B, 27 million, C, 45 million, and D, 26,100,000. To get that, we have to deduct the carrying amount of investment property na nasolve ni Mr. Peregrine kanina amounting to 198,900,000 to the fair value on December 31, 2019 na 225 million. Maaring nagataka kayo kung saan natin nakuha yung 225 million. Sabi po sa problem, on December 31, 2019, ang fair value daw po of each unit was reliably estimated at 25 million. Tapos sabi din sa problem ay dapat man din ay may 10 unit kasi yung isa daw ay na-occupy ng administration and maintenance staff. So may 9 na units na lamang na pwedeng parentahan. So ita-times natin yung 9 units na yon sa fair value na 25 million kaya nakuha natin yung 225 million. So, yung 225 million na fair value less yung ating carrying amount ng investment property na 198,900,000 ay makakakuha na tayo ng gain from increase in fair value na 26,100,000. So, ang sagot po dito ay letter D, 26,100,000. Next po, Miss Valenzuela.
Miss April Norin Pizarra for question number 5. What amount should be reported as depreciation of the building for the current year? Simple lang ang magiging computation natin sa pagkuha ng depreciation. Kailangan lang natin i-divide yung cost ng building sa estimated useful life nito. Since nakuha na sa question number 3 yung initial cost ng building, no need to compute na. Ganon din sa estimated useful life dahil given na ito. So proceed na agad tayo sa ating computation. Initial cost of building amounting to 17,680,000 divided by 50 years equals 353,600. So that will be the amount of depreciation of the building for the current year. Thank you.
So for problem 50-7, it is about investment property. So the problem is an SME incurred and paid the following expenditures in 2021. So hindi ko na po babasahin, nandiyan naman po. And on December 31, 2021, SME assessed that the useful life of the building is 40 years with residual value of 2 million pesos. So for the first question, what amount should be reported as initial cost of the land? Since initial cost ang hinahanap natin, unang ilalagay natin ang purchase price na 50 million. Next is yung non-refundable transfer taxes amounting to 1 million and yung legal cost worth 200,000. So pag-aandin lang natin yung mga nabanggit at magkakaroon tayo ng total cost na 51,200,000. Para naman makuha natin yung initial cost ng land, i-multiply natin yung nakuha nating total cost na 51,200,000 sa 20% kasi sabi sa problem, 20% lang ng price ang attributable sa land. So 51,200,000 times 20%, we get the initial cost of the land amounting to 10,240,000 na letter A. So ang next reporter po natin for the next problem is Miss Ling.
For the second question of problem 50-7, hahanapin naman po natin dito yung amount to be reported as initial cost of the building. In this, we just need to get the 80% of the total cost that was reported on the first question. So we have here 80% of 51,200,000 is equal to 40,960,000, which is in letter B. Next problem, Miss Maigting po.
For question 3 of problem 50-7, what amount should be reported as depreciation of the building for the current year? Alam naman natin na ang depreciation means the decrease in the value of physical properties or assets with the passage of time and use. It is the non-cash method of representing the reduction in value of a tangible asset katulad na lang ng building. So it is computed by deducting the residual value from the initial cost and then divide it to the number of the years or its useful life. So before tayo mag-proceed sa solution, I just wanna mention Rachel and Yasol, hi sa'yo, and fighting. So proceed na tayo sa solution. Ang initial cost ng building as computed in question 2 was 40,960,000. The residual value is 2 million and the useful life is 40 years. So 40,960,000 less 2 million. We have 38,960,000 as the depreciable amount divided by the 40 years useful life. We will get 974,000 as the amount of depreciation of the building for the current year. Next problem.
So problem 50-8 is particularly question number 1 is asking for the amount of net income from government grant to be recognized sa 2019. So let us first read the problem. So on January 1, 2021, an SME received a 1 million grant from national government as an incentive to establish and operate a manufacturing plant in a particular development zone. Funds are remitted from the government to SME when SME incurred expenditure. A grant of 600,000 is conditioned on erecting the plant costing at least 2 million in the development zone and the plant commencing commercial production on or before December 31, 2022. Certain conditions are attached to the type of expenditure making up the 2 million. If these conditions are not met, SME will be obliged to refund the 600,000 to the national government. Grant of 400,000 naman is conditional upon maintaining commercial production at the plant for a period of 4 years from the date when commercial production begins. SME will become unconditionally entitled to 100,000 at the end of each first 4 years of the commercial operation of the plant. And during 2021, SME constructed the plant at a cost of 2,100,000, all of which met the type of expenditure specified under the condition of the grant. During the first quarter of 2021, SME tested the plant's manufacturing process, and on April 1, 2022, SME began commercial production at the plant. So, question number 1, what amount of income from government grant should be recognized for 2021? So, let us first discuss or define what is government grant. A government grant is an assistance by government in the form of a transfer of resource to an entity in return for past or future compliance with specified conditions relating to the operating activities of an entity. And under PFRS for SMEs, there are 3 classifications or ways in the recognition and measurement at ang isa dito ay ang na-apply sa problem, wherein sinabi na a grant that impose specified future performance conditions on the recipient is recognized in income only when the performance conditions are met. So, ang sabi man din sa problem ay naka-receive ng 1 million ng entity wherein yung 600,000 at 400,000 ay may specified conditions. Sa 600,000, ang condition ay an erecting the plant at least 2 million ang cost at dapat ang commercial production ay masimulan on or before December 31, 2020. At sa 400,000 naman, ang need ay dapat ma-maintain ang commercial production ng plant for at least 4 years. Likewise, same year 2019 ay na-meet ng entity ang condition for 600,000. Ang cost ng construction ng plant ay 2.1 million as well as before December 2020 ay napatayo yung plant. But still, no net income is recognized sa year 2019 because the performance condition for the grant are not fully met in 2019. Paano nasabi? Bakit? Kasi nagsimula ang commercial production ng plant ay April 2020 pa. Ay ang required sa PFRS for SME, nag-recognize ng income kapag na-meet na ng entity ang lahat ng conditions. Therefore, sa next year which is sa 2020 pa, magkakaroon ng net income. So the answer is letter D, 0. Additionally, ang grant daw na na-receive ay recognized as liability before the recognition criteria are satisfied. That is all po. So next question will be discussed by Mr. Peregrin.
Ayan, so for question number 2 in problem 50-8, what amount of income from government grant should be recognized for 2022? So ang ating pong choices, letter A, 1 million, B, 600,000, C, 700,000, D, 0. So before po tayo mag-proceed sa solution, shoutout po muna tayo. So Miss Hana Paragas, kung nakikinig ka ngayon, shoutout sa iyo. Please type your comment on the comment section kung saang problem ka na mentioned with the correct answer dun sa problem na to. So, proceed po tayo sa solution. So, kung maalala natin yung problem, sabi doon sa unang grant, which is the grant 600, it is conditional on erecting the plant costing at least 2 million in the development zone and the plant commencing commercial production on or before December 31, 2022. Yun namang grant na 400,000 is conditional upon maintaining commercial production at the plant for a period of 4 years from the date when commercial production begins. So, during 2021, SME constructed the plant at a cost of 2,100,000, all of which met the type of expenditure specified under the condition of grant. So, the two performance conditions on the 600,000 grant are construction of a plant and the plant must commence commercial production on or before December 31, 2022. And The construction was completed in 2021, but the commercial production of the plant began on April 1, 2022. So since the two conditions are fully met in 2022, the grant of 600,000 is recognized as income only in 2022. The grant of 400,000 is recognized at the end of each of the first 4 years of commercial production. Since the commercial production began on April 1, 2022, the income of 100,000 na mula dun sa 400,000 divided by 4 years is recognized on April 1, 2023, end of the first year of commercial production. So, ang sagot po sa question na ito is 600,000, letter B. Next problem po, to be discussed by Miss Acabo.
For problem 50-9, an SME incurred the following expenditures in establishing a tax business during the current year. So, noong May 1, general startup cost na 150,000. Noong June 30, meron legal cost directly attributable to the acquisition of the taxi license amounting to 300,000. Also, noong June 30, merong payment to the taxi licensing authority for the license, including 100,000 pesos refundable purchase taxes amounting to 500,000. Noong July 1, merong printing business cards of the drivers amounting to 15,000. Also, merong payment for an advertisement to be published every month for the next 12 months in a local daily newspaper amounting to 100,000. The economic life of the taxi license is 5 years from the date of acquisition on June 30 with NIL residual value. The taxi drivers own the vehicles which they operate under the SME taxi license. So the question is, what amount should be reported as initial cost of intangible assets? A. 700,000, B. 800,000, C. 750,000, and letter D. 850,000. So, under PFRS for SMEs, the full PFRS, the principles are the same with respect to the initial measurement of an intangible asset. To get the initial cost of taxi license, we need to add the legal cost to payment to the taxi licensing authority, then subtract the refundable purchase taxes. 300,000 na legal cost plus the 500,000 payment to the taxi licensing authority minus the 100,000 refundable purchase taxes, we will get the initial cost of taxi license amounting to 700,000, which is letter A po.
Hi, Mr. Emil. I hope you are listening. For problem 50-10, the problem is on January 1, 2018, SME acquired a trademark for a line of products from a competitor for 3 million. The SME expected to continue marketing the line of products using the trademark indefinitely. An analysis of market, competitive, and environmental trend provides evidence that the line of trademark products may generate net cash inflows for the acquiring entity for an indefinite period. Management is unable to estimate the useful life of the trademark. In 2021, a competitor unexpectedly revealed a technological breakthrough that is expected to result in a product that, when launched by the competitor, will extinguish demand for SMEs' patented product line. On December 31, 2021, SME assessed the recoverable amount of the trademark at 500,000. Demand for SMEs' patented product line is expected to remain strong until December 2023, when the competitor is expected to launch the new product. SME intended to continue manufacturing the patented products until December 31, 2023. So for question 1, what amount should be recorded as amortization of the trademark for 2018? So bali, yung binanggit sa given na trademark na 3 million ay divide lang po natin sa 10. So bakit po may 10? Dahil under PFRS for SMEs, the useful life of an intangible asset is considered to be finite. If the useful life of an intangible asset cannot be estimated reliably, it is based on the best estimate of management but not exceeding 10 years. Kaya ang magiging amortization trademark for 2018 po is 300,000, letter C.
For my last report in this whole discussion, ang hahanapin natin ay yung carrying amount ng trademark on January 1, 2019. To get that, we have to deduct the amortization for 2016 up to 2018 sa trademark noong January 1, 2016 which is given as a problem na 3 million. So, ang hahanapin na lang natin ay yung amount ng amortization ng 3 taon from 2016 to 2018. Makukuha natin siya by dividing the 10 years na useful life of an intangible asset. So, bakit muna 10 years? Kasi kagaya nga ng sabi ni Ms. Paglinawan, if the useful life of an intangible asset cannot be estimated reliably, ang gagamitin ay yung best estimate ng management na hindi malagpas sa 10 years. Then, ita-times pa natin yung amount na makukuha natin sa kung ilang taon pa lamang yung nagagamit na intangible asset. Sabi sa problem ay from 2016 to 2018, di 3 taon. So, times natin siya sa 3 taon. 3 million na amortization divided by 10 years times 3. Makakakuha na tayo ng 900,000 na less naman natin sa trademark na 3 million para makuha na yung kanina pa nating nahanap na carrying amount. So, 3 million less 900,000 ay makakakuha na tayo ng carrying amount na 2,100,000. So, the answer po in this question ay letter B, 2,100,000. Yun lamang po. Next po ay si Miss Valenzuela.
For question number 3, what amount should be recorded as amortization of the trademark for 2021? Simple lang din ang maging computation natin dito, which is similar sa computation sa question number 1. Bago tayo mag-proceed sa ating solution ay define ko muna kung ano ba yung amortization. Amortization is the process of allocating or spreading out the cost of an intangible asset over its useful life. So, proceed na tayo sa ating solution. Para makompute yung amortization of trademark, we just need to divide the carrying amount to the number of years remaining. Since ang tinatanong ay amortization of trademark for 2021, ang gagamitin natin is carrying amount ng January 1, 2021, which is 2,100,000 na nakompute na sa previous question. Then, para sa remaining years, ay bibilangin lamang natin kung ilang taon pa ang useful life ng trademark starting January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2023. And ang makukuha natin ay 3 years. Then, i-divide lang natin yung dalawa, 2,100,000 divided by 3 years remaining equals 700,000. So, 700,000 would be our amortization of trademark for 2021. Thank you.
At para po sa question number 4, ang hinahanap po natin ay yung carrying amount ng trademark before the impairment on December 31, 2021. Ang kailangan natin ay yung carrying amount ng January 1, 2021, which is nakuha na sa question number 2. So, meron tayong carrying amount na 2,100,000. Then, ang isa pa natin kailangan ay yung amortization for 2021 na nakuha na rin sa previous questions na amounting to 700,000. Ang gagawin is ileless lang natin yung amortization doon sa carrying amount. So, 2 million less 700,000, makukuha natin yung carrying amount ng trademark bago ang impairment sa December 31, 2021 na 1.4 million pesos, letter C. So, for Miss Kayla Quirona, pwede po bang pakiulit kung paano nakuha yung carrying amount natin on January 31, 2021? Paki-comment na lang po dyan. At yun lang po. Ang next po ay si Miss Linga for the final question for this chapter.
So for question 1, what amount should be recorded as amortization of the trademark for 2018?
For the last question of problem 50-10 in this chapter, Kukuhanin naman po natin ang impairment loss na mare-recognize in 2021 with respect to the trademark. To get the answer, proceed po tayo sa solution. Next slide. In getting the impairment loss, matatandaan natin na binabawas ang recoverable amount sa kanyang carrying amount. And since nakuha na natin ang kanyang carrying amount before impairment ng trademark from the previous question, meron na tayong 1,400,000, then deduct the recoverable amount na 500,000. So the answer here is 900,000, letter C. Thank you po.
So we are down to our last part, which is the chapter summary. So let's first define inventories before tayo mag-proceed sa recognition and measurement nito. So inventories are assets held for sale in the ordinary course of business, in the process of production for such sale, or in the form of materials or supplies to be consumed in the production process or in the rendering of services. The cost of inventory shall include all costs of purchase, cost of conversion, and other costs incurred in bringing the inventories to their present location and condition. The PFRS for SMEs and full PFRS have practically the same provisions. Their only main difference is the recognition of loss on inventory write-down. So, ito naman yung pagkakaiba ng provisions ng PFRS for SMEs and full PFRS regarding inventory. When it comes to PFRS for SMEs, it says that the excess of the carrying amount over the selling price less cost to complete and dispose shall be recognized as impairment loss. Meanwhile, under full PFRS, it says that the loss in inventory write-down is a component of cost of goods sold rather than an impairment loss. When it comes naman to recognition of inventories as expense, it says that when inventories are sold, the carrying amount of the inventories shall be recognized as expense as component of cost of goods sold in the period in which the related sales revenue is recognized. So, dito naman tayo sa associate. Associate is an entity over which the investor has significant influence but is neither a subsidiary nor a joint venture of the investor. For its measurement, the PFRS for SMEs provides that an investor shall account for all its investment in associates using any of the following. It's either cost model, equity method, or fair value model. Under the cost model, for the initial measurement, the investment in associate is initially measured at transaction price including transaction cost. For its subsequent measurement naman, the investor shall measure the investment in associate at cost less than any accumulated impairment losses. However, the cost model is not permitted if the investment in associate has a public price quotation. Price quote po delivers a fixed price for a product or service. In other words, the investment in associates shall be accounted for using the fair value model if there is public price quotation. The investment in associate carried at cost is also tested for impairment whenever there is an indication of impairment. All dividends and other distributions received are recognized as income without regard whether the dividends are from the pre-acquisition or post-acquisition retained earnings of the associate. So, dito naman sa equity method, same lang yung provisions niya under full PFRS. And ang initial measurement daw dito is the investment account is initially recognized at transaction price including transaction cost, just like the cost model. And ang subsequent measurement naman is the investment is adjusted to reflect the investor's share in profit or loss and other comprehensive income of the associate. Dividends and other distributions received from the associate are recognized as reduction of the carrying amount of the investment. The investment in associate carried at equity is also tested for impairment whenever there is an indication of impairment, just like the cost model. And the excess of the acquisition cost over the fair value of the net identifiable assets acquired is goodwill, which is included in the carrying amount of the investment. Sabi din sa equity method, any goodwill included in the carrying amount of the investment is amortized over the useful life. And the goodwill is not tested for impairment separately, but rather as part of the test for impairment of the investment as a whole. And on the other hand, the excess of the fair value of the net identifiable assets acquired over acquisition cost is included in the investor's share of profit or loss of the associate. Meanwhile, under fair value model, ang initial measurement for the investment in associate is transaction price excluding transaction cost. And at each reporting date, the investment is measured at fair value with changes in fair value recognized in profit or loss. The best evidence of fair value is the quoted price in an active market. Ito yung sinasabi kong published price quotation. So, under pa rin sa fair value model, if there is no active market, the fair value is estimated using a valuation technique. If it is impracticable to measure fair value reliably without undue cost or effort, the investment is accounted for under the cost model. And what constitutes undue cost or effort is a matter of judgment. And the investment in associate carried at fair value is also not tested for impairment, unlike dun sa mga naunang dalawa. And investment in associate shall be presented as a separate line item under non-current assets. The significant difference between the PFRS for SMEs and full PFRS lies in the measurement of the investment in associate. PFRS for SMEs states that all investment in associates are accounted for using any of the following: cost model, equity method, or fair value model. While sa full PFRS, ang sabi naman is the investor has no accounting policy choice. The investment in associates shall be accounted for using the equity method only. And dumako naman tayo sa implied goodwill, which is part pa rin ng investment in associate. Sa implied goodwill, sabi sa PFRS for SMEs, any implied goodwill included in the carrying amount of the investment is amortized. Meanwhile, sa full PFRS naman, ang sabi is, goodwill included with carrying amount of the investment is not amortized. Dumako naman tayo sa investment property. Investment property is property, land, building, or part of a building or both held by an owner or by the lessee under a finance lease to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or both, rather than for use in the production or supply of goods or services, or for administrative purposes, or for the sale in the ordinary course of business. For the initial measurement of the investment property, an SME shall measure the investment property initially at cost. The cost of a purchased investment property comprises the purchase price and any directly attributable expenditures such as legal and brokerage fees, property transfer taxes, and other transaction costs. Ang subsequent measurement naman daw nito is the PFRS for SMEs provides that investment property whose fair value can be measured reliably without undue cost or effort shall be measured at fair value at the end of the reporting period. And any changes in fair value shall be recognized in profit or loss. Subsequent measurement is driven by circumstances rather than accounting policy choice. So if the fair value of the investment property can be measured reliably, the entity must use the fair value model. Pero if the fair value of the investment property cannot be measured reliably, the entity must use the cost depreciation impairment model. The residual value of such property is deemed to be nil or zero, as the fair value cannot be measured reliably without undue cost or effort on an ongoing basis. The investment property whose fair value cannot be measured reliably on an ongoing basis is presented as a separate line item under investment property carried at cost less accumulated depreciation and impairment. So the next one is property, plant, and equipment. The PFRS for SMEs defined PE as tangible assets that are held for use in the production or supply of goods or services for rental to others or for administrative purposes and are expected to be used during more than one period. So parang opposite to sa investment property. For its initial measurement, an item of property, plant, and equipment shall be initially measured at cost. And the cost of an item of PPE comprises all of the following: purchase price, including legal and brokerage fees, import duties, and non-refundable purchase taxes; any directly attributable cost to bringing the asset to the location and conditions necessary for it to be capable of operating in a manner intended by the management; and initial estimate of dismantling costs and restoration costs for which the entity has a present obligation. And para naman sa subsequent measurement daw ng PPE, the PFRS for SMEs is now amended to allow the revaluation of PPE. So under daw sa paragraph 17.5, it provides that an entity shall choose either the cost model or revaluation model as an accounting policy and shall apply that policy to an entire class of property, plant, and equipment. Next ay itong government grant. It is an assistance by government in the form of a transfer of resources to an entity in return for past or future compliance with specified conditions relating to the operating activities of the entity. For its recognition and measurement, a grant that does not impose specified future performance conditions on the recipient is recognized in income when the grant's proceeds are receivable. And a grant that imposes specified future performance conditions on the recipient is recognized in income only when the performance conditions are met. And a grant received before the revenue recognition criteria are met is recognized as a liability. And government grants shall be measured at the fair value of the assets received or receivable. The next one is the intangible asset. The FIRS for SMEs defines an intangible asset as an identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance. And when it comes to this, the intangible asset is identifiable daw when first, it is separable, and B, it arises from contractual or other legal rights. For its recognition naman, sinasabi dito na an SME shall recognize an intangible asset when A. It is probable that the expected future economic benefits that they are attributable to the asset will flow to the entity, and B. The cost of or value of the asset can be measured reliably, and C. The asset does not result from expenditure incurred internally on an intangible item. For the initial measurement under intangible asset, the SME shall measure an intangible asset initially at cost, and the cost of a separately acquired intangible asset comprises the purchase price, including import duties and non-refundable purchase taxes after deducting trade discounts and rebates, and it also includes any directly attributable cost of preparing the asset for the intended use. Meanwhile, yung subsequent measurement naman is an SME shall measure an intangible asset after initial recognition at cost less accumulated amortization and any impairment loss. In other words, PFRS for SMEs requires the cost model only in measuring an intangible asset. Intangible assets with indefinite useful life are not amortized but tested for impairment annually and whenever there is an indication that the asset may be impaired. So we are down to the last one, which is revenue. Revenue results from the sale of goods, service being rendered, construction contracts income by the contractor, and the use by others of your assets. And its principle for measurement is that the fair value of the consideration received or receivable, taking into account any possible trade discounts or rebate, including volume rebates and prompt settlement discount. And if payment is deferred beyond normal payment terms, there is financing component to the transaction. In that case, revenue is measured at the present value of all future receipts. The difference is recognized as interest revenue. For the recognition of sale of goods naman under revenue, an entity shall recognize revenue from the sale of goods when all of the following conditions are satisfied. A. The entity has transferred to the buyer the significant risks and rewards of ownership of the goods. B. The entity retains neither continuing managerial involvement to the degree usually associated with ownership nor effective control over the goods sold. C. The amount of revenue can be measured reliably. D. It is probable that the economic benefits associated with a transaction will flow to the entity. And lastly, the costs incurred or to be incurred in respect of the transaction can be measured reliably. So, dito na nagtatapos ang discussion ng Chapter 50, which is SMEs, Recognition and Measurement. Thank you for listening!